I never expected to be humiliated at my own sister's engagement party. The lights were warm, the smiles rehearsed, and everything about the evening felt carefully arranged. The kind of night where nothing is accidental and everyone knows the role they're supposed to play. My sister Evelyn laughed easily, her voice carrying across the yard as people leaned in to hear her.
She was always good at that.
Making a moment feel bigger just by standing in it. When she said it, when she introduced me as just admin at a courthouse, people chuckled like it was a harmless joke. Someone clinked their glass. Someone else nodded like it all made sense. My chest burned, but I stayed quiet. Because that's what I always did. My name is Verity. And, for as long as I can remember, my family has loved neat labels. The kind you can explain in one sentence. The kind that don't invite follow-up questions. The kind that make other people comfortable. My sister Evelyn was always the impressive one. Ambitious. Charismatic. Loud in the best way. She could walk into a room and somehow make it orbit around her, without even trying. Teachers adored her. Relatives bragged about her. My parents leaned forward whenever she spoke, like whatever she said next might be important. And me? I was the quiet one. The reliable one. The one who works at the courthouse. That phrase followed me everywhere. Thanksgiving tables. Birthday dinners. Casual phone calls with relatives who hadn't seen me in years. "So, you're still doing admin work?" they'd ask, smiling like they were being kind.
Either not. Yeah.
Still there. And the conversation would move on. What they didn't see was how carefully I'd learned to stay invisible around them. Not because I was ashamed, but because every time I tried to explain what I actually did, their eyes glazed over. Or worse, they looked uncomfortable, like my words were threatening the balance they were used to. Especially Evelyn. I learned early that my accomplishments made people you. The table went still. Not polite still.
Not awkward still.
The kind of stillness where everyone suddenly realizes they're part of something they didn't plan for. Every eye shifted toward me. I could feel it physically, the weight of attention pressing against my chest, my shoulders, my throat. Conversations that had been buzzing just seconds ago died mid-breath. Forks hovered above plates. Someone's laugh cut off too abruptly. Daniel's question hung in the air. "What exactly do you do at the courthouse?" For a moment, no one spoke. Not because they were being respectful, but because the question didn't fit the script. I didn't answer right away. I looked down at my hands resting on the table. One thumb traced the rim of my glass slowly, deliberately. The wood beneath my fingers was cool and solid, grounding me. I could hear the low hum of the string lights overhead, the faint clatter of dishes from the kitchen. Life continuing, even as something quietly cracked open. In that pause, memories rushed in. Every holiday where I'd been asked to help set up instead of sit down. Every dinner where my work was reduced to a single word that made people comfortable. Every time I'd started to explain, only to stop halfway when I saw their eyes glaze over. I remembered standing alone in my apartment late at night, shoes still on, rereading notes, preparing for another long day. Knowing none of it would ever be mentioned at the table. Not because it wasn't important, but because it didn't fit the version of me they preferred. Across from me, Evelyn was smiling too hard. Her jaw was tight, her eyes sharp. She could feel the shift, even if she didn't understand it yet. My mother stared down at her plate like it had suddenly become fascinating. My father reached for his glass, and then stopped halfway, his hand hovering in uncertainty. Daniel didn't rush me. He didn't repeat the question. He just waited. And something inside me finally settled. I realized then that I hadn't been protected. For a long moment, no one spoke. Not because there was nothing to say, but because everything that could be said had already landed. Evelyn stood there, her hands clenched at her sides, chest rising too fast. She looked around the table like she was waiting for someone, anyone, to rescue her, to laugh it off, to defend her, to reset the familiar order. No one did. Daniel was the first to move. He stood slowly, pushing his chair back with deliberate care. The sound was soft, but it echoed louder than Evelyn's outburst had. "Evelyn," he said carefully. "The way you spoke to her." "Don't," she snapped, cutting him off. "You're supposed to be on my side." I am on the side of the truth, he replied. His voice wasn't raised. That somehow made it worse. And I don't know how I missed this. How I let it happen. She stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. You're choosing her? She demanded. Daniel didn't answer right away. He looked at me instead. Not apologetic. Not guilty. Just clear. I'm choosing honesty, he said finally. That was the moment it broke. Not loudly. Not explosively. But completely. Evelyn's confidence, the thing that had always filled every room, collapsed inward on itself. Her eyes darted around again, desperate now. My parents sat frozen, caught between the daughter they'd always praised and the one they'd never truly seen. My mother's hands were folded tightly in her lap. She looked small somehow, like the night had aged her all at once. My father stared at the table, jaw clenched, avoiding everyone's eyes. This is unbelievable, Evelyn whispered. Her voice wavered. You think you're better than me now? I shook my head. No, I said quietly. I think I finally stopped pretending to be less. She flinched, like the words had found a place she didn't know how to protect. For a second, something raw flickered behind her anger. Fear. Uncertainty. The realization that the version of me she'd built her confidence against no longer existed. Then A few days passed. No calls from Evelyn. No messages. No carefully worded apologies disguised as explanations. Just distance. The kind that settles in when something breaks and no one knows how to put it back together. My parents called again. I let it ring. Not out of anger, but because I needed the quiet. I needed to exist without being pulled back into the role I'd just stepped out of. Then one afternoon there was another knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, Evelyn stood there.
No makeup.
Hair pulled back.
No jewelry.
The version of her that never showed up at family gatherings. For a second, neither of us spoke. She looked smaller somehow. Not weaker, just unguarded. I didn't know where else to go, she said finally. I stepped aside and let her in. We didn't hug. We didn't sit close. We sat across from each other like two people meeting without a script. I didn't mean for it to go that far, she said, staring at the floor. I thought it was harmless. I waited. Silence has a way of pulling the truth out when you don't rush to fill it. I was scared, she admitted, of being ordinary, of being second. The words hung there, fragile and exposed. For the first time, she wasn't performing. I needed to be the impressive one, she continued, the one everyone talked about. And when you started becoming more, it felt like something was being taken from me. I believed her, not because it excused what she did, but because it finally explained it. I never wanted to compete with you, I said quietly. I wasn't trying to take anything. She nodded slowly, like she was hearing that for the first time. I know that now, she said. I just didn't know how to stop. We didn't cry. We didn't forgive everything. Some things don't disappear just because they're acknowledged. But something shifted. The weight of years, unspoken, mislabeled, minimized, finally had a name. She stood to leave not long after. I don't know what happens next, she said at tea. Life didn't change overnight. There was no dramatic apology tour. No perfect family dinner where everything suddenly made sense. What changed was quieter. And more important, my parents started asking questions and actually waiting for the answers. Not the shortened version. Not the one designed to keep things comfortable. The real one. Sometimes they were awkward. Sometimes they didn't know what to say. But they stayed present. And that was new. Evelyn and I weren't suddenly close. We didn't text every day. We didn't become best friends. But the edge was gone. The need to compete. The need to dominate the room. It had been replaced with something unfamiliar, honesty. Daniel called once. Not to update me. Not to explain his decisions. Just to say thank you. For reminding me, he said, that silence can hide things that matter. I understood what he meant. Silence had hidden me for years. Not because I wasn't visible, but because I'd allowed myself to be misunderstood to keep other people comfortable. I used to think staying quiet was kindness. That if I didn't correct people, if I didn't challenge the story they told about me, I was being generous. I was wrong. Silence didn't protect anyone. It just taught people how small they were allowed to make me. The truth is, you don't owe anyone a smaller version of yourself just to keep the peace. You don't owe explanations that make others feel better about underestimating you. You don't owe comfort to people who never bothered to see you clearly. If you've ever been there, hiding your growth, softening your success, letting yourself be mislabeled because it felt easier, you're not alone. And you're not wrong for wanting to be seen. Sometimes all it takes is one moment, one question, one word, one decision to stop disappearing. And everything shifts. My name is Verity, and I finally learned that being quiet doesn't make you invisible. Letting yourself be unseen does. If this story resonated with you, share it in the comments.